You are listening to Fierce Feminine Leadership, episode number 204 with Kelly Lovell.
Welcome to Fierce Feminine Leadership, the success podcast for women in business. Each week, we feature interviews and advice to help you step into your power and lead your way. Now here's your host, women's leadership expert, Eleanor Beaton.
Hello there, Fierce Ones. Eleanor Beaton here, and welcome back to another episode of Fierce Feminine Leadership, the success podcast for ambitious women in business. I am so excited about our show today. I'm going to be interviewing a powerhouse millennial leader. This is a woman who has so much going on and has accomplished so much by the tender age of 23. It's going to blow your mind. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about how she became the woman that she is today, how she manages multiple projects, how she leads a variety of different brands, how she's grown her business. We're going to get a lot of great detail and insight on that. But, before we get there, I want to talk about something interesting that happened to me today. I was coaching a client. This woman is a general counsel inside an organization, and we were talking about the primacy of energy and how maintaining your energy is so critical when it comes to leading. And, when you talk about energy, there's lots of different ways to tackle it. I was just speaking with another client the other day who's based in Australia, who's a specialist in helping leaders expand their energy and lead from a place of very high energy. On the show before, we've had great people like Kristen Nolan, like Jill Payne, spiritual athlete, talk about energy from a physical and mindset perspective. And, when I think about energy, I think about it in terms of where am I leaking out my power? Where am I giving it away? And what are the areas, where's the low-hanging fruit? Where can I plug things up right now so that I'm no longer leaking out energy and leaking out power that I want to keep so that I can continue doing the things that are important to me, so that I can lead my team, I can build my business, I can coach my clients, I can lead my family, all that good stuff. And for an example of that, one of the power leaks that I've had to plug is delaying important conversations because the idea of having them makes me feel uncomfortable. Now, I know you know what I'm talking about. And I know you've probably done this too. It's this idea that you need to have an important conversation. You don't want to have that conversation because there's something about it that might be a little bit confrontational. Maybe you need to call someone on something. Maybe you need to put down your boundaries. So you delay having the conversation. And all that does is allow your power to leak away. So when it comes to elevating your energy, to really stepping into that leadership position that you want to be in, the first thing that you want to do, the low-hanging fruit, is all about plugging those power leaks. So this fall, in a couple weeks, I'm going to be offering a free masterclass on exactly how to do this. It's called 5 Ways Ambitious Career Women Give Their Power Away at Work. I can't tell you that the impact it has when you start to think about, before you start doing new things, before you start the massive exercise regime, before you go to Whole Foods and drop a fortune on all kinds of supplements and nutrients and all that good stuff. Not that it's not important, but let's start with the easy, low-hanging fruit, people. Let's plug the power leaks where you're already giving your power away on a day-to-day basis. So on this masterclass, I'm going to teach you 5 surprising power leaks that derail the careers of even the best educated, most highly qualified professional women. Many of you are listening to this show, so you're going to be interested in that. How to tell if a lack of self-awareness is holding you back from opportunity and threatening your reputation among colleagues and decision makers. We're going to talk about why so many professional women struggle to transform from doer to leader, and why this failure to change could keep you overlooked and underpaid. And then also proven strategies to boost your confidence and your personal power, even in the most competitive work environments and cultures. So listen, it's September. The kids are back to school. People are back to work. There's this whole renewed sense of energy. We want you to plug those power leaks so that you can really get out there and be the leader that you're here to be. So if you want to sign up for that free masterclass, it's going to be a 90-minute masterclass. I'm going to be bringing it. Head on over to eleanorbeaton.com/training. Okay, eleanorbeaton.com/training, and you can get the details on that. And another quick announcement for you, we have opened registration for the Leadership Lab. So the Leadership Lab is our flagship program. It is an 8-week group coaching program for ambitious women leaders. I have really taken everything that I have learned, observed, and put into practice, coaching, consulting, and advising women who are just starting out in their careers through to some of the most powerful and influential business women leaders on this continent, put it into a program that is really designed to help you dial up your influence, your impact, your strategic networking skills. So these are the skills that when you put them to use, really position you as a woman of preeminence in your field. These are the skills that I have used with my clients to see them negotiate significant promotions, significant pay raises, that have seen them increase their rates, become much more better paid as consultants. And there's certainly the same skills I have used to really build my business and coach and lead my team. So if you want to check out that program, our enrollment is open. We're open for our next cohort. Fabulous, life-changing, fun program. You can head on over to leadershiplabforwomen.com. That's leadershiplabforwomen.com. All right, let's get on to our scheduled events here, shall we? I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Kelly Lovell. She is an acclaimed youth mobilizer and social entrepreneur, and she's bridging the gap between business and community to create opportunities for the next generation to thrive. She's a 15-time award-winning thought leader, a 3-time TEDx speaker, and the CEO of Lovell Corporation and My Effect. Her clients, and she has collaborated with organizations such as the United Nations. She's been featured in Forbes, Inc., The Globe and Mail, Fox News, Entrepreneur, and she was recently named one of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's Young Leader of 2016, a really prestigious award that celebrates youth leaders from Commonwealth countries that are making a profound difference in communities. So she's going to talk about meeting the Queen. She's going to talk about, how she leads her businesses, how she gets it done, and really the conditions that have allowed her to become such a powerhouse at just 23. So really excited to bring her on. Ladies, here's Kelly Lovell. Kelly Lovell, welcome to Fierce Feminine Leadership.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm delighted to have you here. And, as I mentioned in the intro, you have a ton going on. You're a youth mobilizer, social entrepreneur, 3-time TEDx speaker. You have 2 companies. You travel a lot. You volunteer a lot. You have been to see the Queen. It's incredible. How do you get it all done?
Well, I'm always kind of told by those who know me quite well that if I didn't have all of it, I'd probably get bored quite quickly. I am definitely one of those individuals who likes to keep busy and have my hands in multiple projects and have really a diversity in my work days. And I think that diversity, in a sense, is in some ways how I stay productive or kind of can handle all of these things is I allow myself to really, in my day, there's no day that's ever the same. Rather than kind of trying to stick to a specific schedule of X amount of hours are going to be for this project, I let my project needs come and ebb and flow as they need, which allows me to kind of jump between different projects and keep things dynamic enough that I'm always enjoying what I'm doing and I'm not getting too bogged down and frustrated or kind of tired of doing something for a long time.
Got it. And so you mentioned the word projects. Is that sort of the organizing mechanism by which you run the workday or which you handle these various things that you have on your plate using the project, idea?
Very much so, yeah. So within each company, we'll have certain portfolios. So one day I might be looking at user experience on our technology platform. Another day I might be looking at designs and post-production plans and storyboards for our media projects and our book from our company. So I kind of I guess, mentally kind of compact things into many projects, at least mentally. And that really helps me have a start and a finish and feel accomplished when I get something done, which helps kind of keep that energy going, rather than looking at something as a really large chunk.
Got it. So tell us what you do through Lovell Corporation.
So Lovell Corporation is my larger parent company, and my first company I founded at 19, and it focuses on bridging the gap to the next generation. So under the portfolio, we have about 5 different brands that help businesses and stakeholders, so educators or government, connect with millennials and Generation Z. It started primarily in consulting, so doing marketing consulting, or most popular right now is, or topical, I should say, is millennial employee engagement. But then I realized that if I really wanted to bridge the gap, that speaking workshops and consulting could address the issue at more of a surface level. But if I really want to bridge the gap, I need to create proprietary products and services that could dig deeper. So we expanded Lovell into first the media realm, where we produced positive media for teens, sharing how youth could learn from role models and giving brands a way to kind of connect in with their demographic in more meaningful context. And then most recently, that's expanded out into SaaS and software, where we look at full suite kind of employee engagement tools that they can use to implement the things that we would talk about in a consulting session.
Got it. And then tell me about My Effect.
So My Effect was actually born out of some of the work that I was doing through Lovell. One of the core components when you look at something like an employee engagement or youth engagement right now with a millennial focus is this innate desire or kind of appeal to purpose-driven cultures and the need for businesses to think beyond just their profit and how they're making a difference in community. And so what we did with that is build a platform that was a corporate social responsibility and volunteer management software that was designed to meet the needs of the modern millennial or the modern kind of volunteer, so to speak, which focuses a lot on tracking the skills-based volunteering that individuals do in the community and their positive impact. So My Effect is an action platform that connects the two together, helps users find, track, and share their positive impact, while allowing organizations to measure the ROI on their CSR or volunteering programs.
Got it. So you're bringing, if we just take a look at Lovell, for instance, you've got 5 different brands under that parent company. How did you, for many entrepreneurs, it's challenging enough to build one brand. And so how did you decide to create 5 underneath one main umbrella? And how do you manage and continue to grow each of those brands, giving them, the intention and leadership they deserve?
Well, that's a really important question, because I think if you start, it's important to ensure you can give the attention to each of the brands as they need so they can grow and prosper. And I would say my answer to how they came about and how I managed that is that it was organic. In the sense is it started off as one brand and one service, and then finding out I'm going to actually answer this in 2 ways, because I think there's 2 important considerations, actually. The first is when you're an entrepreneur, the power of branding is extremely important and something that can't be ignored. It is kind of that foundational catalyst for an entrepreneur and their startup. But it's really easy sometimes when you're building a strong brand to incorporate your personal brand into that. And for me, I have a strong personal brand. And so my goal with Lovell and with some of these other brands was to ensure longevity of my company, where I didn't make my company's success completely reliant on my personal brand, that there was some growth in there. So down the road, I can step back with my personal brand and the company can still grow and prosper without necessarily having me always at the helm at every meeting and all these things. So the first kind of, I think, inspiration to developing these brand portfolios was having that separation or those boundaries. And then from there, they organically grew in the sense of when I was addressing a certain target market or a specific need, that it didn't make sense for one brand to do it all. It dilutes the voice if you're trying to just do a little of everything. So I ended up creating these separate brands so they could be niche focused. So one could be focused specifically on youth media. One could be focused on software and data. One could be focused on kind of activation, so speaking, influencer marketing. So by kind of segmenting them by kind of their service or their sector, it enabled me to have a stronger focus and value proposition to clients.
Got it. And that makes so much sense. And thanks for taking a deep dive into that, because I think, you're so right. It when you have a strong personal brand, and you are offering, a range of services or products for a specific target market, really thinking about how can I niche these down, to create separate companies, to really actually build a sustainable, business here that's going to serve my clients and my employees over the long term. It makes a ton of sense. Now, just based on listening to you and what you're capable of and your track record, it makes sense that you can manage, these multiple things at once. How do you translate that into guidance and leadership for your team? Because I presume that there'd be certain team members who may have a hand in a couple of different projects at once. And I think this is a great example of leadership. And obviously this is something that is right up your alley, leadership and particularly, youth leadership and so on. How do you guide a team who is working on potentially multiple projects at once? What kind of leadership do you offer them to get the best results?
Yes, well, that I think is team dynamics when you have big portfolios is important. It's something, I think, a topic that we don't necessarily look at as much as when we look at team management. So I think it's an interesting question. We share an office, and what I mean by that is like Lovell and My Effect come together as a central team. So we do team building together. They share the same kind of open area desks areas in some of our places. So we do see each other as kind of a bigger, larger family. And so when we do like any like monthly roundups where we will come together and talk about it, I have everyone come together and we will share Lovell projects and we will share My Effect projects in the same conversation. So everyone feels and kind of knows what the other projects are happening. So they kind of still feel a part of it. But when it comes to productivity or managing, I would say it's very important as a leader to make sure there's focus, and as a leader having discretion on how much you give to a team member or how much you disclose or kind of put on their plate. And what I mean by that is, for me, managing all these different brands and things, yes, I can do it, and my mind goes a mile a minute, and I'm thinking about these at 2 a.m. and I can handle it. And can you view it? I think everyone's called me like a squirrel on speed or something, because I can bounce from different things and I'm totally fine. And I learned the hard way when I first started that when I did that, and if I brought my team in and I told them all of the things that we have on our portfolio for the next month, and we're doing this, and this, and then this portfolio we're doing this and this, they all look like deers with headlights because it's just too much to comprehend. And so what I've learned is you really need to compartmentalize things and give your team members things in pieces that are relevant to their portfolio, enough general that they can feel a sense of what else is going on, but not into the nitty-gritty of every portfolio, because it's just too much to take in.
Got it. It makes total sense. It makes total sense. And there is a difference, and that is the thing about leadership. You do see the big picture and can handle the big picture, sometimes in a way that, for individual contributors inside the team, there may not be that same comfort level, with the kind of grandeur of the vision. But to get back to you for a moment, how do you tell us a little bit about how you go about sort of planning, weekly, monthly, quarterly, with this big volume of initiatives that you've got going on? What does your planning process look like?
It's funny. My planning process has certainly evolved because when I first started out, and I think this is maybe innate to just being maybe young and new, that my sense of time was significantly different than it is now. I was like, I would come into it, and when I first started, I was like, oh, well, we'll do a national fundraiser, and we'll throw it all out and put it together in less than 2 months. And people thought I was crazy. They're like, you can't do a national campaign in 2 months. You need a year to plan this. I'm like, a year? That's like a lifetime. How could I do that? And now I'm already planning like 2018, 2019. I've gotten into the corporate mindset in terms of planning. So I try and still keep things agile, which I think is really important in startup life, particularly because things change too often to stick to too much of a rigor of a plan that's like a yearly basis. So I think it's important that on your weekly or kind of your day-to-day has a little bit more of an agile style, so you can kind of address needs that come up, shift priorities as needed to make sure your objectives are met. But equally important is still having that longevity in your planning to still do quarterly planning and monthly goals. So basically what I'll do is I will take a quarterly planning and then we'll go to the team and I'll bring to the team the month planning. So in my mind, I have the quarterly, and we might have like an initial brainstorm of it. And I will be looking at what's next quarter. And then what we'll talk about in the office, though, is what's in this month. And then we'll do weekly kind of sprint reviews where we'll address things with weekly goals. But I think having that ability to have the long sight and the short sight really helps you keep moving despite some of the obstacles that might come in your way.
So one of the things that's so interesting about your experience is, you are a young CEO, 23, I believe at the time of this recording. You started your business at 19. So yes, you've been in business for 4 years, and there are many entrepreneurs who are listening who their businesses may not be 4 years old yet. But what's interesting about you is the speed with which you have built this, but also the age at which you've built this. So you mentioned earlier, my whole concept of time and planning has evolved and is much different than it was, when I started my business at 19. What I'm saying here is all the evidence shows a person who has really been able to learn quickly and learn how to lead quickly. Inspiring communication is the hallmark of the world's greatest women leaders. When you know how to elegantly and persuasively share your message in a way that people will hear and act upon, nothing can stop you. Eleanor Beaton here, and I want to warmly welcome you to a free mini course that we're going to be hosting called How to Find Your $1 Million Message. In this free mini course, you will learn the exact formula that made Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In such a blockbuster bestseller, and how you can find your $1 million message. I'm going to teach you how you can get booked as a paid keynote speaker, even if you don't have an agent or best-selling book yet. And finally, I will share some insider secrets about how to quickly build a global brand and set yourself apart as a woman of influence through speaking. Whether you are looking to grow your business or step into your next level of leadership inside the corporate world, this training is going to give you what you need to help you elegantly and persuasively share your $1 million message with the world. To sign up to get access to this free mini course, all you need to do is go to eleanorbeaton.com/message. That's eleanorbeaton.com/message. I'll see you at the training, and I can't wait. What have been the most important resources for you in terms of learning and developing your leadership skills?
I would say definitely that and I would say for any listeners too, that you'll never kind of know it all, regardless of kind of where you start. And I think part of the evolution as a leader is really, you got to get your hands dirty and learn learn and reiterate and continue to grow. So I would definitely say it wasn't always like roses and rainbows all the time, that I've had some difficult learning experiences. And I think those are the ones that have shaped me the most, in the sense that mentors, of course, when you're young is particularly really effective, because although I didn't have the experience of knowing some of these things, I've had really incredible supports that have come in and kind of provided insight and that guidance, or even if it's just that tap on my shoulder to just tell me, I told you so down the road. I told you you're going to go down this path, but you needed to do it yourself. And that's okay too, because you need that sometimes. You need to go to the dead end before you realize, yes, there's a cliff at that end. But I think that's part of the journey in itself. And I would also say, though, the biggest learning experiences I've had is probably from my team. I started off really as I still am to this day, a solo founder, but I started off early on my businesses. The first 2 years, I had 0 staff. I was a one-woman show for everything, all the time. And so I was a very efficient and independent leader. But when it came to bringing on your first hires and expanding the team, that's probably where I had the biggest learning curve of learning, how do I build trust? How can I allocate other responsibilities? And how do I, communication is one that some of my early team members will probably would emphasize of. I would have everything in my head. So for them, oftentimes we would have situations where there wasn't enough details to do an assignment because I assumed they knew half the things that were in my head, and so there were some frustrations and some learning curves. And I think that's probably what I'm most grateful for, the initial team members who were patient enough to stick out with me while I learned these things, and the mentors along the way that continue to be there every time I needed that shoulder.
And tell us about your team today. What does it look like?
My team is young. I am a big believer in, we always kind of look at these things. I'm a big believer in first chances. And what I mean by that is I think too often we judge people by their experiences when we look at candidates. And I look more I want that passion, that fire in that. And I don't care if you're new or you've never done this before. If you're willing to learn and jump in with me, I would love to work with you. So I have a young team that way, which keeps the energy really nice. And then we have a mix, as I mentioned. So we have a split between MyEffect and Lovell. So Lovell is going to be focused more on, I guess you would say, digital media and marketing. And MyEffect will tend to be a little bit more of our developer side of things. So there's a kind of an even mix of kind of talents or skills.
Got it. Now, there are a lot of solo entrepreneurs listening to the show. What difference, who are contemplating, taking the leap and making that first hire? Maybe they have a couple of part-time people supporting them, but, what impact did it have for you on your business and your, even more importantly, your ability to make an impact, in all the areas where you're making an impact today? What impact did it have for you to start building your team and move from a one-woman show to a team effort?
Well, in terms of capacity, for sure, that was the number one thing. Is when I still work to about 2 and 3 in the morning, doing full hour, like I do 18-hour, 16-hour days, and it's a lot. But when this is with a team. Without a team, I don't think some of these brands would not be able to run, just because there's just not enough hours in the day to get everything done. I would say for those who are looking to start the leap, I would caution and recommend to just be aware that in the first couple months, it's going to be more work than less. I think that was probably one of the biggest learnings. I thought, okay, if I bring on a hire, I'm going to have all this free time. It'll be great. But what ends up happening is there's a lot of extra work, because you almost have to do every work twice when you're first coaching someone and teaching them and creating the orientation guides and putting everything that, as I mentioned, is in your head on paper. So I would say it is a little bit of It does take an initial investment of time to do, which can be stressful for someone if they're used to doing everything themselves, and you kind of get this thing, oh, I could do this much more efficiently just on my own. But if you invest in that time down that road, those processes will always be there, and those documents, and the more you start to get on paper, the less time the next hire is going to be to bring them on board. And what that's enabled you to do, particularly as a founder, if you're the kind of the visionary type that's looking at kind of the high level strategy, product ideation, etc., it allows your mind more time to do that. And what I mean by that is it's very easy in startup life to get bogged down by all the operations and all the day-to-days and the mini to-dos and things that are almost like brainless activities that just take up time, but you have to do. When you start to grow your team, it allows you as a leader to focus more on these higher level things and not have your day overwhelmed by all of these other little things that happen throughout the days as well. So in the end, it will reduce your stress and allow for more creativity and room to think. But in the beginning, it will take a little bit of investment.
I love that point, and it's so true. In the beginning, delegation is actually a little bit more time consuming, and so yes. What happens is people, they experience that, and then they're like, why am I doing this? I'm supposed to be saving time. Well, you don't actually save time in the beginning. You certainly do over the long run. Now, now that our listeners have had a chance to really kind of dig in and get a sense of who you are and what you do, and just how impressive, it is what you've built, and in the relatively short amount of time that you've had to build it, I would love for you to take us back to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how the sort of key experiences in your upbringing that shaped Kelly Lovell.
Yes, so I'm an only child. I was always your overachiever type, so I'm involved in a lot of things, but I was one of those ones that was just as much, so I'm a girl in STEM by heart, in the sense that I was totally into math and science and had slime kits and chemistry kits at home and loved everything to do with kind of the analytical fields. But at the same time, I was a competitive dancer and I did arts and crafts and pottery and all of these things. I was very kind of well-rounded, I guess you could say, in my interests. And so I think that helped kind of shape me a little bit to in building as a solo founder. It helped me in the sense of being able to understand marketing as much as I could understand operations or a different side of the business. In terms of kind of my development and growth, I would say one of the biggest influences that I had was probably more the subtle things of growing up. So things that I look back now that more shape my mentality, more so than kind of a skill set, so to speak. And what I mean by that is, for instance, I didn't notice it or do anything growing up, but growing up, I was brought up with my dad was always kind of adamant of encouraging me to stand up for my voice. So we went to a restaurant and they gave me the wrong order, that I would speak up and tell them that wasn't what I ordered. Or if I got a service at a store and they didn't treat you properly, to speak up. Or and in these small little things. And the fact that my parents just let me explore and create, in the sense that I would have a wild ambition, and rather than saying, Kelly, that's not logical, or you can't do that, you can't meet the queen, or you can't go to the Oscars, they let me pursue those ambitions. And I made it to the Oscars and did these things. And I think that kind of mentality of the freedom to create, mixed with this other mentality of understanding the importance of my voice, has really shaped me, particularly as a woman in business, to not see a glass ceiling, or to see any barriers or limitation to my potential of an idea or a business. And that allows me to have a more, I guess, a bigger picture thinking. Now, obviously, some ambitions will always be ambitions, and some can be very skyrocketing where you feel like your head's in the clouds. But I think it's important sometimes to still have that ability and not feel as if there's always a roof on, or a cap, so to speak, on a potential of an idea or where life can take you.
Now, you mentioned meeting the Queen, and of course, you were named Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's Young Leader of 2016. Tell us about that recognition and what it ultimately has meant for you.
I still, to this day, it's so surreal, to be honest with you. Never growing up, or even before it even happened, would I imagine that I would be standing in Buckingham Palace, shaking the Queen's hand and meeting her in the throne room. It's one of those things where it's like definitely a Princess Diaries moment where you just feel like, you're just like, is this happening? It was my first time going to Europe, and I'm getting flown to meet the Queen. You can't really beat your next trip to Europe, I don't think.
This is true. This is true.
And so I think what it really meant to me, though, aside from kind of the glam and just the sparkle of the entire event, is more so what it represents, of that, really to that point I mentioned earlier, of this kind of no ceiling thinking, where you really let life and your potential grow to its full capacity, and that anyone with that right tenacity, determination, and passion can have the ability to chart their own path in life. I didn't come from any special upbringing. I was the first generation businesswoman and scholar, and I didn't have any kind of foundational support for my businesses to dictate that I would have that even in a foreseeable future. So I think it really opened my eyes to a lot of the message I try and coach young entrepreneurs and my peers, is this ability that you can take your future into your own hands, and with that right passion, and I think also element or purpose to what you do. So you're not just doing it just to turn a quick buck, but you actually have purpose and a mission behind that. And if you really stick to that mission, you have the ability to change your circumstances and create that better future.
Now, when it comes to no ceiling thinking, and I love that expression, no ceiling thinking, it's tempting to look at high achievers such as yourself and say they don't have the same limiting thoughts, maybe, or they don't have, maybe they've had, and you've mentioned, I didn't necessarily have the most perfect circumstances, but there were certain lessons and certain ways of thinking that helped me, along the path. But when you think about this concept of no ceiling thinking, what are the practices or intentional ways in which you protect your ability to no ceiling think?
Do you mean like what techniques I use to continue to keep that mentality?
Yes.
So I would say it hasn't always been easy, and definitely for those who relate or don't have that kind of go-getter mentality, I would say I didn't always have that, and I had some hardships along the way and mental health challenges that certainly made me have to find other ways to sustain that mentality. And really what it came down to is kind of you get what you put out in the universe, is really kind of my mentality. So the more you project kind of positive energy towards your ideas, yourself, the people around you, the more positive energy you'll attract back into your life. And so I try to make a conscious effort to stay optimistic. And when I'm really feeling that mentality shift, or feeling down, or in a particularly going to more of a dark place, maybe I'm experiencing burnout or something like that, I think awareness is key. The fact that just understanding, just kind of almost not necessarily coming out of your body, but this fact of kind of understanding and acknowledging the situation, being like, okay, I can see what's happening here. I'm getting in this negative mindset. I'm kind of spiraling down. Even just the fact of just stopping to acknowledge that in itself helps you switch that mentality a little bit, because you start, instead of becoming in a reaction mode, you start to kind of switch into more controlling and having a little more control of the situation and your emotion. And while you might not be able to switch your emotion in that time, it is one step kind of above where you were. And then from there, what I consciously do is try and see, well, what can I bring in to bring a more positive mindset? Is there something, let's look at what I did get done instead of all my frustrations of what I couldn't get done today, or something like that. So there's techniques you can pull in after that, but I think a consciousness and awareness would be the first step.
Who inspires you and why?
Oh, I get asked this question all the time. And to be honest with you, I still to this day don't have like my top role model is X. And I think the reason I don't is because I like to draw inspiration from different individuals that come into my life, rather than kind of finding one role model in media or something to follow and really be inspired by. But to the short answer to who inspires me, I would say is my peers, young entrepreneurs. We've just most recently, the latest project from Lovell is our first book publication, and it's called The Power of Youth. And it features 200 stories of youth as young as 6 years old all the way up to 29 who are pursuing their talents and passions to make a difference in their community. We have 6-year-olds who are helping the homeless in their communities, inventors who are restoring sight to the blind, like these things that just blow your mind, wrench on your heart, and inspire you. And just reading one of these stories in a day motivates me to knowing what I'm doing has value, and to continue to do that so I can create more opportunities for these incredibly talented future leaders of our world, and B, to raise the bar, because they are doing so many incredible things. Every time you read a story, you're just like, and they're how young, and what, and their challenges are what, and you're just like, okay, my challenges are just now minuscule in comparison, or they just raise the bar so much higher. They're helping how many people, and I've only helped X. I gotta up my impact.
Kelly, you've got to speed up here.
Well, that's the kind of the mentality. So I think that's really where I draw my inspiration. It's just connecting with these bright sparks. Never ceases to light that fire and that kind of spark in your own business and your own life.
So what is next for you? What are the sort of big, hairy, audacious goals that you are working on next?
So next is we're going to be doing a big launch of My Effect globally quite soon. So that would be something to look out for, which I'm very excited about. I've been working on this really for over 2.5 years, this new release that we're going to be launching. So I'm really excited to finally get the product and the platform in the hands of users. And so that's number one. And secondly, with Lovell, we're launching the Power of Youth book for a global education program, which is really exciting to finally, a lot of my work is service-based or kind of more intangible online and digital. So to have more of a physical product that I could hold in my hand and to kind of see all those, that time of work as an end product is really, it's really, you can't describe the emotion that brings. So definitely those are kind of the two. Lovell will be releasing growing a lot more in this millennial Generation Z space. We have a national research study releasing in the fall that's going to tell you more about what to expect from this next generation and how employers can better recruit and engage the future of the workforce. So suffice to say, we have a lot of exciting developments that are all going to be coming out between fall and winter timeframes. So if you follow me at kellyalovell.com or online, you will get all these updates, and it'll be quite a journey, I anticipate.
So, and that led me to my final question. You know, there are so many exciting things to learn about what you're doing and also learn from you. Where can we send people so that they can follow Kelly Lovell?
Yeah, so Lovell Corporation. So Lovell is, think of it, love with 2 L's on the end, Lovell. So lovellcorp.com will have most of the business portfolios and all of our updates and releases. And then for anyone who, if you resonate with anything that I've said today or you have further questions, I welcome anyone to connect with me online. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and LinkedIn. It's all the same. It's just Kelly A. Lovell. So you can find me on any platform with that handle.
It's been such a pleasure connecting with you today, Kelly. You know, such an inspiration for all women in terms of the service that you are lending to our world or giving to our world, and also the spirit of entrepreneurship with which you're doing it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the time.
Thank you for listening to Fierce Feminine Leadership. Be sure to head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. While you're there, leave us a fierce review. When you leave a review, your name is automatically entered into a monthly draw. Each month, we'll draw one reviewer to automatically receive a private coaching session with women's leadership expert Eleanor Beaton. So remember, head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Then leave us a review for your chance to win a private coaching session with Eleanor Beaton. Go to EleanorBeatonPodcast.com and sign up to get your free cheat sheet, The 5 Critical Leadership Skills of 7-Figure Businesswomen. This free download will help you diagnose the exact skills you need to see major growth in your business and career. Head over to EleanorBeatonPodcast.com and get your free download today.